Hello, everybody. Wow, it's so great to have you all here. I can't believe it. On this sunny Wednesday here in London. It'd be good to know how sunny it is where you all are. Hopefully it's nice and sunny there too. But welcome to Jossie Talks number 7. I actually can't believe we're in 9 weeks of lockdown. Here in London, it sort of appears like we're coming towards the end. There's talk of ease and certain restrictions have been relaxed, which is great. Just to let you all know, as you're joining us, there's lots of Lucy's incredibly interesting. We've got lots of really interesting stuff to cover. So do stick around. We might run 5 to 10 minutes over the hour. But we had 980 executive assistants from every single continent on the globe, as we've just experienced. And this is Jossie Talks number 7. We started these as a way to help our community sort of get through COVID. But they have progressed into something so much bigger. And I suppose it's been one of the biggest highlights of my 10 years of running Joss Search. We're really passionate about helping people and championing the hidden heroes, as we call them. So you, the people in business who are behind the scenes. And 44% of you voted to hear from Lucy today. So your wish is our command.
Thank you.
She is. And I'm super delighted to have her here. I've always sort of known how influential Lucy is in our sector. I didn't know just how popular she was, but after getting to know her, I can totally understand why. I've been really and unbelievably impressed by her knowledge and also her passion for you guys. And I meet so many people in my life, and it's rare that I meet people who are genuinely motivated by empowering others. And Lucy, you are definitely that. So I'll let Lucy introduce herself shortly. So not too much more from me, guys. Sorry, just a little bit more. But today we're going to be covering quite a bit. Your unique skill sets. We're going to be looking at how EAs can step into leadership, why this could be the best opportunity for you to show how indispensable you are. And Lucy's kindly prepared a sort of around 30-minute presentation.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
30 minutes. And we've also had all of your preloaded questions. We have lots, and we've put them all into categories, which we will cover after her presentation. And hopefully we'll also have some time for some live Q&A right at the end. So try and stay with us, hold your questions until the end. We can answer your live ones then. And for anyone who wants to stay, I'm sure Lucy and I'll get through as many as we can. And something new for the ones who weren't with us on Jossie Talks number 6, which was our giving back one. We're running a competition. What we'd really like you to do is to follow us on Instagram. We don't have many followers on there, and we are quite an interesting bunch, so we'd like to increase our followers on there. We're going to be asking you to follow us on Instagram, Joss_search, and take a picture of you watching the webinar, share it on your story, and tag Joss_search and Lucy Brazier into the story using the hashtag Jossie Talks. We're going to share the details of that on the chat, just to remind you in case I didn't make any sense. Everyone who enters will automatically get a 10% discount code to use at ExecSec Global Live, which is an absolutely awesome 2-day, now online, virtual in this world training event, and it's an absolute must attend. And we're also actually going to give one lucky entrant a totally complimentary ticket to the event, and then they're £400 for people who don't subscribe to ExecSec and 300 for those who do. So it's really worth everyone entering this competition. And let's get everyone talking about this event. So Lucy, over to you. Who are you?
Okay, hi, so nice to see you all from all over the world, and I recognise some names coming up there in the right hand column. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the CEO of Marcham Publishing. We publish Executive Secretary magazine, and that's where it all started 9 years ago. It's a training magazine which has absolutely no advertising in it at all. We also produce the Executive Secretary live conferences, which happen on 5 continents, and as Sivan said, we're now about to take that online because obviously we're in a situation where we need to do that. But very excitingly, we have 52 speakers taking part in that one. And we also run training in all over the world. I think last year was about 60 different training events. So anything training, but behind all that, we campaign passionately for you guys to get the recognition that you deserve. I am on the board of the World Administrators Summit, which is the equivalent of your G8. So we're trying to do all sorts of things to help get your profile raised. And I'm just really delighted to be here. This is a relatively new audience for me, I think. A lot of you out there probably don't know who I am. And I am excited to share some knowledge with you and to answer all your questions. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Lucy. I'm extremely excited. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. So I'm really excited. Just before we launch, we're going to run a very quick poll just to try and understand how everyone's feeling at the moment, how utilised you're feeling. Lucy, you did some research before COVID for Exec Live that said around 58% of assistants weren't feeling utilised. And actually, we're just really keen to see, for you guys in particular, what you're feeling right now. So the poll should be launching, and if you wouldn't mind just giving us your answers. So how utilised do you feel in your current role right now? Properly utilised, moderately utilised, or poorly utilised? And how utilised did you feel in your role before COVID-19? Exactly the same answers there. So just to give you sort of 10 more seconds to vote, and then we will share the results, because I think it'll be really interesting to see how everyone's feeling right now. So are we ready to share the results? Have we had enough time, do you think? Great. Okay, so interesting. So there's definitely been a drop. Before COVID, you were feeling so 56% of you were feeling properly utilised, 35% moderately utilised, and 9% poorly utilised. And right now,
where is the box for overutilised? Says Evelyn.
Yeah, we should have done that. And that's a good question, good one. And how utilised do you feel in your current role? So properly utilised 26%, moderately utilised 51%, and poorly utilised 23%. So a good spread right there, and hopefully that sort of gives us sort of what we were hoping for. So Lucy, I'll hand over to you now to put your presentation. I'm going to put myself on mute, and I'll see you soon.
Wonderful. And I'm just going to share my screen, and then I am going to, let me see that here. Come on, be nice. There we go. So it's going to be one of those where you can see me and I can see you, and there we go. Are you now seeing? 2 moments, please.
I can see the deck, just not in, that's it.
Hooray, good, excellent. So let me get on then with presenting. So today I'm talking about the changing world and your place in it, and I'm going to move us down there so that you can't see, us. Excellent. That's me, that is my magazine. I already introduced myself, and that's the end of the sales pitch. But I wanted to start by saying that there really is no normal at all. Everything just changed, and that means the rules did too. Now, this place here is my happy place. This is beautiful Javier, which is in Spain. And 2 days before Spain went into lockdown, we sent all our stuff on a lorry off to Javier in Spain, because we were going to move there. My husband is 70, he's just retired, and we decided that that was where we wanted to live from now on. And guess what? We're still here in London, mainly because we were totally unable to get there. So our stuff's there, we're in London, it's fine. We've all just got to make the most of it, and see where we get to. But I think for a lot of you, it is unsettling. I'm hoping you're settling down a little bit from where you were previously. And we're going to talk about how you can make the most of this situation and use it in order to springboard into the position that we keep talking about you wanting to be. And we're going to talk a little bit also about artificial intelligence and how that's impacting, because that's what we were talking about, wasn't it, before we came into this pandemic a lot. I think probably we've just got to a point now where that's been speeded up somewhat. But let's get into the topic. So some questions to ask you, please. I'm not going to ask anybody to share. I just want you to think about them for yourselves, because it'll get you into the right kind of mindset for the rest of this presentation. The first is, what are your professional ambitions? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Or are you so busy doing the job that you really haven't given yourself a chance to think about it? And that, for a lot of assistants, is the way that it is. You keep talking to yourselves about wanting to be more proactive, but because you're so busy, you find yourself in a situation often where you haven't got anything else other than being a firefighter. So where do you want to be in 5 years' time? What is your current authority and boundaries? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you haven't asked about things that you would really like to do, if you're honest about that, is that because, you know, if they haven't given you the things that you would like to do, is that because you're honest, you just didn't really know how to ask, or you thought maybe you were getting above yourself? Quite often there are things that we know how to do them better, or there are things that you feel, I would love to be able to take that over, but they won't let me. And I hear that from you a lot. I think it's important to realise that your businesses employ you, not your executive, and we'll get into talking about that a little bit more in a moment. Then, what are your current strengths? What are the things that you're absolutely amazing at? Because when I do training, I quite often ask you that, and we go round the tables, you know how you do at the beginning of a training course, and you kind of say, okay, so tell me, what are the things that you are phenomenal at? And you go, yeah, I'm kind of good at. Assistants aren't great at shouting about the things they're amazing at. So what are your current strengths? And then conversely, what are you maybe not so good at? What are the things you're not great at? Because now is a great opportunity to take some classes, to do that stuff. If you can't afford to pay for it, YouTube is a wonderful thing. And there are so many of these free webinars out there at the moment. It's a fantastic opportunity to maybe pick up some of the skills, which if you're honest, you know, when they come and put stuff on your desk and you go, yeah, I wish they hadn't done that. Those are the things you need to go learning. How much do you know about your business? There's a great deal of difference between knowing and understanding. And I think most assistants know a lot about their businesses without necessarily understanding what that means. And again, this is a huge opportunity to sit there and learn more about what your executives' goals are and objectives, because I'm not sure how many of you know what they really are. Quite often you say to me, we're coming up to appraisal time. We're coming up to our annual meeting to talk about what my objectives are. And Lucy, what do you think I should be setting those as? And more often than not, when I say, well, what are your executives' goals and objectives? You stare at me blankly and say, well, I really don't know. Well, if you don't know what success looks like for them this year, and you don't know what the business is expecting them to achieve, how can you possibly support them to get there? So maybe go ask. And then finally, are you clear about how you can help? Because I think a lot of assistants are saying to me at the moment, I'm feeling really underutilised. They're not telling me what it is that I need to do. And I'm going to them and I'm saying to them, I really want to help you. What can I be doing to help? And here's the problem. Your executives are amazing people, most of them, but they are thinking big picture, right? They're not thinking about the detail. And right now that can mean that they are trying to make sure that they're making all the stakeholders and shareholders happy. It can mean that in some cases they're trying to save the businesses themselves. So actually they haven't got time to answer that question. You go and you say, what can I help you with? And more often than not, it's, I am so busy, please just go away and work out for yourself what it is. So maybe sit and think about some of the things that you would like to do for them. And that could mean some of the things that you would in the past have liked to do for them as well, because you have a responsibility right now to be freeing up time for them to go and do the things that the business is paying them to do. And we'll come on to more of that in a moment. None of us like change terribly, do we? It's not comfortable. And the reason it's not comfortable is because it means that we're out of control. We're not quite sure what's coming next. But if I was going to tell you that nothing would ever change again in your life, you would be absolutely horrified. And so what I would say to you is, yes, this is a situation which is difficult. We're very definitely in the unknown. None of us are quite sure really where it's heading or what it's going to look like when we come out of the other end of it. But look at change as a good thing. Look at it as something that's going to give you opportunity. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you do that and how you present your case to maybe add value. Not more work, by the way, not more work. Just making sure that your business really understands how invaluable that you are. So I might say a few things over the next half an hour, which you're going to think, yeah, I'm not sure that fits very comfortably with me, actually. And that's okay. You need to give yourself time to change, because I think quite often when change scares us, it's because it happens very rapidly and we don't have time to get our heads around it. I want you to think about yourself like this block of ice. And if you were going to change the shape of a block of ice, you would melt it and then you would refreeze it, and that takes time. So if you leave this webinar today going, I'm not really sure how that might work for me and I don't feel very comfortable, just give yourself some time for it to sink in and to think about it a little more, because it is the way that it's going, and I know that from talking to thousands of you right the way across the world. I think last year was 183 events and it was something ridiculous like 42 countries. So I've probably spoken to more of you across the world than almost anybody else on the planet. And the things that I'm going to be talking to you about today is the information really that you are sharing with me. A shipping port is safe, but that isn't what ships are built for. I think if you're feeling comfortable in your role right now as an assistant, you're probably not in the right place, because even before this pandemic, everything was changing totally. It was like somebody had taken a pack of playing cards and they had thrown them up in the air and nobody was quite sure where they were going to land. And that was for all sorts of reasons. You know, 10 years ago when Lehman's went bang, you all took on a whole heap of new responsibilities. A bit like now, you know, they furloughed lots of people, they've got rid of people, and so now they come to you and they say, how can you help us to do this stuff? And you're taking on all sorts of things outside of your comfort zone. It was exactly the same 10 years ago. But again, usually that's with no training and no more money. So you're wanting very much to look at this situation now and think, okay, that's what happened 10 years ago. Maybe I want to be sure that I'm portraying to them what my worth is. But also before this crisis, we were talking a lot about artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence was likely to be taking over the role. What I would say is that that is mainly for people who are doing task-based things as opposed to proactive project-based stuff. And we'll talk more about that too. It's a really good time right now to look at bringing order to chaos, and that's what you're good at, isn't it? You're the chaos tamers. You're the ones that look at situations that are all over the place and you say, this is how I'm going to bring procedure and process to it. It's something that I can't do if my life depends on it. I'm a CEO. I'm absolutely great at driving things forward and being excited about new ideas and coming up with new revenue streams and working with people to form new partnerships and, you know, all that stuff. But ask me to sit and put a process in place for how we're going to get there, and I would rather poke my eyes out with a sharp stick. So Matthew does that. I go to Matthew and I say, I've had an amazing idea. And Matthew goes pale because he knows it's him who's going to have to make sure that it works. But that's why it's such a good partnership. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Belbin. I love Meredith Belbin. Meredith Belbin said that in an ideal team, there are 8 different types of person. And he said that in order to make a team work most effectively, you should have one of each type of person in that team. And some businesses take that so seriously that they'll only hire for the one strand that they are missing when they're doing recruitment. And so what's really interesting about Belbin is that when we test assistants and we test executives, you usually fall into totally different areas of Belbin. So your executives tend to be in shaper or plant, and basically what that means is that they're either people that are absolutely sure how to make decisions. They want to do that very quickly. They get very impatient. If you give them a one-pager with some bullet points on it, they're probably bored by the time they get to point 3. And they're quite autocratic and they don't really care whether they upset people or not. So if you recognize your executive there, they're a shaper. Then you have plants, and plants are the ones who are really cranial. Think somebody like Bill Gates, for example. The ones that are great at putting into place new products, new services. They are always thinking creatively and outside the box, but maybe they don't do communication so well. And then finally, the resource investigator. And the resource investigators are the ones who are, I guess, a bit like me. They're leading people, they're driving things forward, they are full of energy and enthusiasm, but they can't complete or finish anything if their life depends on it. I can actually, but that's only because I've taught myself, but I don't particularly like doing it and it's not my skill set. So then if you look at the assistant on the other side, what you find that you get is you get completer finisher, and completer finishers are the ones who dot the I's and they cross the T's and they make sure things happen. Then you have team workers, and the team workers are the ones who make sure that everything is smoothed out and that people are communicating properly and that everybody is happy. And especially at the moment, making sure cultures work properly is hugely important. And then finally, the implementer, and those are the people that do what it says on the tin. So they are the ones that are great at doing the nitty-gritty and the process and the procedures and making sure that everything is aligned. So I'm hoping that you can see that over here, you're going to have your executives' world and the way that they work. And over here, you have your world and how you work. But when it meets in the middle, it's a joy. It's like two sides of the coin. It's like one perfect person. And that is why your business employs you, because they want to make your executive as effective as they can possibly be. And they recognize that there are gaps in the skill set. And so therefore they employ you to fill those gaps so that for every hour that they are paying your executive salary, you are picking up the bits that they are not so good at so they can get on with the making money bit and doing the things that the business is employing them to do. I think quite often it's not who we think we are that holds us back, it's who we think we're not. And I hear from you a lot, you know, I don't really think that's my place, it's not how it works at my business. If you understand that you're employed by your business, not by your executive, it changes your entire mindset. And let's just talk about for a moment about how you add to the bottom line, shall we? Because if you take your salary, you take your executive salary and work out how much that is, shall we just agree that's a lot? That's a good figure, a lot. And then you work out how much time you save them, which is also a lot, and you times one by the other, that is how much you are going to be adding to the bottom line. I think even the worst of you are probably saving your executive 30% of their time, whereas, you know, the best of you maybe 80% of their time. Times that by their salary, that's what you're adding to the bottom line. And that's before they spend that time going and doing new business deals or doing meetings that are going to drive the business forward. That is also what you add to the bottom line. And that's before you do your job. So please don't tell me anymore that you're not as valid as anybody else in the business because your support, it just isn't true. What matters most is how you see yourself. Here's the thing, you are the expert at being the assistant, they are not. My very first assistant, Elizabeth, sat down with me the day that she was given to me. And I was so excited because I was like, oh, I got an assistant. But really, it was a status symbol for me. And I had no clue how to use her. The average manager doesn't get management training till they're 42 years old. 42. So that's a whole heap of management walking around that have no clue how to really use you, how to utilize you. So Elizabeth sat down with me and she said, you know, Lucy, let's have a conversation about the things that you would like me to do for you. And I was trying to be managerial. So I came up with a list of a few things I would like her to do. And she just shook her head and said, you know, no, that isn't what the best way to use me is. And taught me. And you know what? I would tell you, she came with me to 3 companies after I worked with her initially. And part of the reason I'm so successful is because I had her first, and then I had Matthew. And Matthew I'll talk about quite a lot this afternoon. The only reason that I don't still have Elizabeth is because she's based in Wellington and her dad got sick, so she went home. But really, she totally showed me that we were a partnership, and all those things that I really found it difficult to do and that were taking away so much of my time. Those things that you complain about all the time, like emails and travel management and calendar management and, you know, all the things that your executive says they rather do for themselves, you should be doing. Here's the thing, let's talk about how you ask for that stuff, because I know that a lot of you are asking them in such a way that they're going to say no to you. There is a way to ask which is business speak, and I'm going to come on to that shortly. So then, I want you to stop thinking about yourself in terms of being a gatekeeper of people, because that's what a lot of us think we are, and start thinking about yourself in terms of being a gatekeeper of time, which is something totally different. Break your executive salary down into by hour, and then realize that the business is employing you to make sure that every single hour that they're working is spent to the best advantage. Let me give you an example of that, and we'll go back to the email example. So if your executive, and this is the average executive, by the way, they're spending 4 hours in a day in meetings, they're spending 3.2 hours a day doing email, and that's if they only get 100 emails a day. I get an average of 500. That only leaves them 1.4 hours left to do everything else that they're meant to do during the day, including having lunch and going to the bathroom. No wonder they're all freaking out and they're so overworked. The average executive is actually spending 58% of their time doing email. So that's 58% of their salary that the business is spent on them doing email. So if you don't have access to their emails right now, that's crackers, right? We actually have a system, which I'm not going to go into now because I don't have time, but it's a system that is a triage system, which will take that 58% down to 12%. It's a system that Matt and I developed, and it's phenomenal. And we've got that all written up. So if you want to email either us or Steve and Josh, then we will get that over to you. But here is my point, okay? A lot of you are saying to your executives, oh, I'd really like to do your email. I'm your assistant. I should be doing your email. Why won't you give me your email? It's taking you up so much of your time. If you were to do that as a business conversation and say, the woman that did the webinar with us today explained that 58% of the average executive's time is taken up by email. That's 58% of your salary that the business is spending on you doing email. I have a system that will take that down to 12%. Shall we try it? That's far more of a business conversation, right? And most of you are working with numbers, so you know that they're going to get that. This guy is wonderful. His name is Jeff Hoffman, and some of you will know him, even though you think you don't know him. He's the guy that founded Priceline.com and Booking.com, and he's worth 58 billion. And he travels around the world and speaks at assistant events, and I've been very lucky to share a stage with him on a couple of occasions. And he tells some wonderful stories about his assistant, Bobby. The reason he speaks is to honour her. Unfortunately, she was killed in a car crash several years back, and he says that he wouldn't have been so successful in his business life if it hadn't been for her. But one of the stories that he tells is about a friend of his who was an eminent heart surgeon, Carl. And he says that he went to see Carl one evening, and whilst he was talking to him, Carl was doing his calendar. And eventually he said to him, Carl, what are you doing? And Carl said, well, you know, I'm doing my calendar. And he said, but aren't you worth $500 an hour? Now, Jeff says, if you're not an assistant, you are an assistant. Just think about that for a minute. If you're not an assistant, you are an assistant. So Carl was paying his assistant the equivalent of $500 an hour to do his calendar for him. How many things is your executive doing for themselves right now that you should be doing for them, that the company is paying them their salary to do stuff that you should be doing? So you're saying to me, how do I do that conversation, Lucy, with my executive? Well, the good news is that we have done a recording and it's there on our YouTube channel for you, how you can use your assistant properly to give you back 80% of your time. It's a 20-minute film that I did a couple of weeks ago during Administrative Professionals Week. It was in my attic, so you'll have to excuse me. But it basically says exactly what I've just said, but aimed at your executive. So maybe if you were to forward that to them to say, you know, I think I saw this film and I think it might be useful to start a conversation between the two of us, because I would love to be doing more for you, and I think this gives us some ideas as to how I can make you even more successful.
Lucy, sorry to interrupt very quickly. We're getting lots of questions from the, we're going to share all the full recording, and we'll share all the links to the YouTube channel, absolutely everything, so don't panic, you'll get it all tomorrow in the key takeaways.
Fantastic, thank you, Sivan, very much indeed. Excellent, good. So this is just summarising what it was that I said earlier, really. Knowing is not understanding. There's a great difference between knowing and understanding. You can know a lot about something, but not really understand it. When I'm first training assistants that are not very experienced, one of the exercises that we do is very silly. And I get them to stand in a circle, and we start by throwing something around the room, usually some kind of stuffed animal. And I say to them, get into some kind of sequence. And once they've got used to that sequence, we put that to one side, and then we introduce a ball and we throw that around for a bit. And once we've got used to that, we introduce a stuffed animal and we throw both around. And eventually there are 3 or 4 things flying around the room, and there's lots of laughter and everything else. But the point in that is we're watching where things are coming from and where they're going to. And as a junior assistant, we probably don't need to do much more than that. However, a lot of us get stuck in that pattern. And I think if at this point you're a senior assistant or you're wanting to step up into management, you need to be stepping back and looking not just at where things are coming from and going to, but looking at the big picture and why, and asking those questions. I think the best assistants are curious and ask questions all the time. And why is almost the most important one. You know, what are we trying to achieve by that? I don't understand where that fits into the rest of the process. Can you explain to me what it is that we're trying to get to as a business by implementing that? How can I support you best with this new thing that we're doing? Matthew always says he reads all my sent emails, and that gives him better information than almost anything else. And so that when we do our one-to-ones, we go through all that information so that he has a real understanding of what's going on within the business. Find your voice. You need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's no good anymore sitting there on the sidelines thinking that it's okay to keep your head beneath the parapet, because we are going, as I said earlier, from this task-based thing where people in seniority are saying, can you do this for me and can you do that for me, to a situation whereby if as an assistant you're going to be proving your return on investment to the business, you need to be proactive, you need to be asking the questions, you need to be looking for the gaps, and you need to be stepping up to make sure that you're delivering at the highest level. You know, look at this, 40% of productivity is directly connected to communication. It's about empowering both your team and your business, because, you know, that piece, which is the process piece and the procedures piece, is absolutely key. It is your superpower. Nobody else in the business can do that. And right now, with everybody running around like headless chickens trying to reinvent the world, you guys are the ones who are going to put that stuff in place. Do you think that if you go to your executive and you say, I have got some ideas here as to how I can support you, which of them would you like me to start with? Or you imagine yourself sitting next to your executive in their office and they've got a pile of papers like this, an imaginary pile of papers, and on it is everything that they're needing to do right now. And you sit with them and you go through them one by one and you say, well, I can take that, and I can take that, and I can take that, so that they can get on with doing all the amazing things that the business is paying them to do. I think it's important this, because if you look at it, when I'm talking communication and training about communication, 55% of communication is body language. If you are at home right now and you're talking on the phone, or God forbid, sending emails, that communication is going to get lost. Yes, and the more you're working from home, the more important it is for you to understand this. It's only 7% of communication that's actually done through words. That's why email often doesn't work. It takes on a tone. And if you don't understand what I'm going on about, just think about the numerous ways that you could say thank you. I could say thank you, or I could say thank you. But we're going to hear it in the way that we want to hear it, right? So pick up the phone, talk to them, or even better still, even if you hate it, get in front of them like this so they can see your body language and they can see your face and everybody understands. And whilst I'm at it, it should be one meeting every day, even if it's just the 10 minutes. Because how can you possibly get on with your job unless you know what their priorities are for today? My meeting with Matt is probably the most important meeting that I do on a daily basis, because he can't get on with doing what he's meant to do until we've worked out what my priorities are. So here you are. I'm not going to go through all these. They'll be on the slides tomorrow. But here are some things that maybe you could suggest, and ways you would think that you could help your executive. You know, what are the new processes that the business is going to need? What just changed? And even if it is your HR department that's doing it, the fact that you're thinking about it says that you're above the average assistant. And there are ways here that you're going to be able to help them. Have any of you put together a administrative procedures manual? I think that Sivan is looking at getting Julie Perrine in possibly to talk in a few weeks' time, who is the queen of procedures, and she will show you how to do that. But putting together an administrative procedures manual so that people working from home will know exactly how they're going to do that so that the business benefits, or so that you're onboarding people all in the same way. That's a key way that you can help. But look at all these different questions here. This is Matthew, who is my assistant. He's worked with me for 8 years and he's absolutely phenomenal, but mainly because he's always thinking about ways that he can make life easier for me. It's at the heart of what he does, and we very much operate as a partnership. And there are times where I say to him, Matt, you know, I'm really sorry. I want you to do this. I promise I'll find you something more interesting to do tomorrow. And he says, please don't. I'm very happy doing these things the way that I'm doing them. So it's a perfect partnership because he's as calm as I am bonkers. But let me just give you a quick example here. Well, I've got a couple actually, but the first is as a way to be thinking ahead and maybe thinking slightly outside the box for your executive. Last year I went to speak at APC, biggest conference in the world for assistants, 2,600 attendees. And he had, first of all, done me a travel plan. Well, most of you would do that with a whole heap of detail. Then he had given me a biog for each of the speakers with a photograph of them so that I could study those on the plane on the way over there. That was something he did off his own back. And again, some of you would probably do that. But when I got to the venue, the speakers who were walking towards me kept saying, oh, how lovely to meet you. And my phone kept pinging with people. And it turned out he'd gone onto my LinkedIn group and had messaged every single one of them as me and had said, I'm really looking forward to meeting you. And I hope that I get to stop by and see your presentation. Now, just think for a second about what that does for my business as a training business, as someone who manages a speaker bureau. You know, it just means that those presenters were on side before I even got off the plane. That's thinking of outside of the box. The other thing he's done for me, which has totally revolutionized the way that I work, is that he has put aside gold time for me on a weekly basis. So I used to go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and especially at the moment, that's exhausting when that's online because my head's over here, I do a great meeting, and then 5 minutes time, I'm in a meeting over here on something totally different. So he's put gold time into my calendar. And what that means is that I have time to do the things that I said I'd do in the meeting, or to go to the bathroom, or to get a cup of tea. It isn't just an onslaught. It's about not being scared of your executive, but being scared for them and protecting them and making sure that they are able to operate in the way that they are meant to be, which at the moment is absolutely on full power. This is the other thing that we decided we were going to do. And I know we had some questions about how you get your executive to see how busy you are or how not busy you are, or managing multiple managers, and we'll come on to that later. But this is something that Matt and I put into place really quite early on, because I'm a great one saying, I've got an amazing idea, have it, and here's something really urgent, have it, and can you look at this, please, now. This is also really urgent. So we took to time boxing, and this is what this looks like after reading an article in Harvard Business Review. The link is there and it will come through tomorrow. But basically, he time boxes my calendar with everything. And especially at the moment, it's even breakfast and lunch and walking in the park, and everything that I do goes in there so that we can see exactly how my time is blocked out. But he also does the same for him, so that when I'm looking for him to do a project and I go, this is really exciting, he goes, where? In a really nice way, he says where. And so we can discuss it and work out whether we're going to shift it around, or whether maybe it goes next month, or, and you know, when he's managing me and a couple of the other members of staff as well and all our calendars, it's really important that we're all able to see visually, I think, how that's going to work. Look, the rules have changed. Being totally serious, the rules have just totally changed. So if you were sitting in your comfort zone, if you were waiting for the miraculous day to arrive when they were suddenly going to see your worth, it's now. It really is now. If you step up at this point and you grab it with both hands and you show them what you're capable of by looking at where the gaps are and where you can fill them, it might be that you decide that you're going to go away and do some research onto what other policies people are putting in place. It might be that they are writing a proposal and you're going to go and find out the history for them. Or you're going to say, what are you trying to achieve this week? What are the things that I can do to put the foundations in place to make it easier for you? Do you see what I'm saying? Start looking for where you could maybe do briefing documents. Step up now. Because when you get back to the office, they're going to say, she or he was phenomenal, and I really couldn't do without them. I wouldn't be able to have got through this crisis if they hadn't been there assisting me every step of the way. This is Anne Hyatt. Some of you will know Anne. She's just amazing, and she's also my neighbour in Spain, which is a joy, and I can't wait to get there, because when I do, we're going to be sharing an office. But Anne was the Chief of Staff at Google. She's now a consultant and working with all sorts of tech startups. But She started off her career working for Jeff Bezos, then she went working for Marissa Mayer, and she ended up as EA to Eric Schmidt at Google, before creating the role of Chief of Staff for herself by getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, by putting her hand up in meetings and asking questions, by not sitting there and just doing minutes, but by being an integral part of the team, by taking notes on the projects that the executive was giving everybody else to do and making sure she was chasing them on their behalf so that they didn't have to, by deciding when Eric was going off to go for a visit with Sharon in Israel that she was going to put together a briefing document for that on the history of Israel so that Eric could be operating with the full knowledge. But you know what? She tells a great story about when she first went to work for Jeff Bezos at Amazon. And she said that it was, first of all, the meeting that they went into for her interview, he took the lid off the pen and said, okay, Anne, we are going to work out the number of panes of glass that there are in Seattle. And she thought, what? And he said, don't worry, I'm going to do the math. And they spent an hour filling every whiteboard in his office with how you could work out the number of panes of glass in Seattle. And at the end of it, he said, I like the way you think, I'm going to bring you on board. She then said that on her first day, she walked into his office and there was a book and a couple of newspapers and a magazine on his desk. And she made the decision there and then that she was going to go and buy whatever he was reading on a daily basis and read them cover to cover. And she never told him, but it meant that she was always on the same wavelength and they always had things to talk about. And then thirdly, it's one of my very, very favourite stories about Anne. She was saying that she found that Jeff every year would employ somebody who was called the shadow. And the shadow was somebody who would follow him around the business, who would look at the way he thought about things, who would be there basically in case anything happened to Jeff, so that somebody would be able to pick up the pieces. And Amazon is now full of shadows. But she said halfway through her first year, she suddenly realized that she was also the shadow. She was in all those meetings. She was following him around. She understood how he ticked. And it changed her mindset totally and put her into a position where she was no longer thinking about herself as the assistant, but rather as somebody who was absolutely key to the business. But she created her opportunities for herself. That's my point. She's not sitting there waiting for it to happen. And she wasn't, sitting there in her comfort zone. She thought to herself, this is where I want to be, and this is how I'm going to create that opportunity for myself. Here are the things she said to me about the new normal when I talked to her a couple of weeks ago. Volunteer for projects way outside your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to get things wrong. Get over feeling stupid. There's a value to being the new voice in the room. Wherever possible, say yes. Maybe give repetitive jobs to somebody less experienced so that they can learn and step up. Make sure you're developing a healthy disrespect for authority and the status quo. Because, quite often we think, I would love to be doing that. I think somebody's thought that through already, and I don't want to seem like I'm stupid if I suggest it. As a CEO, I'm here to tell you that half the time we thought through nothing. So step up and tell us if you've got an amazing idea, and stop asking permission. Really understand the strategy. Do you know what the business strategy is? If not for the whole business, then just for your department. Where are they trying to get to, and how do you slot into that to make life easier for everybody? I said it several times this afternoon, get comfortable with being uncomfortable and be hungry to understand more. Curiosity, I think, is one of the most important things for an assistant. And finally, and this is really important, be vulnerable. Surround yourself with people that you trust so that you can brainstorm with them, so that you can come up with new ways of doing things and sense check it first. So I think then in summary, what I'm really saying is we don't want to be reactive, do we? Because if you're reactive, you're going to be waiting for tasks and for direction, and you're not going to have any influence or direct authority. And that's dull. Let's face it, it's dull. And more than that, in the age where AI, artificial intelligence, is going to take over the stuff that is task-based, it's not good for your role either. You'll find yourself out of a job. Where you want to be is where you're being proactive and assertive. So you're actively contributing to that business partnership. You're able to contribute ideas, meet and set expectations and deadlines, and understand and support the business strategy at that highest level. And so here are the two most important questions you can ask yourself moving forward. The first one is, where can I take on greater responsibility? As I said earlier, not more work, more responsibility, because there is a difference. We know that you have quite enough work to do currently. but also how can you add value in order to expand the current boundaries of your role. And this is how you do that. If you don't want to send them the video that I was talking about earlier, you come off this, and the next time you talk to your executive, you say, I saw an amazing webinar, and the woman who was talking on it, that's me, the woman who was talking on it, reminded me that my role is to make you the very best that you can possibly be, and to free up your time currently so that you can get on with all the things that you absolutely need to do. And I have got some ideas around that. And I would like to sit down and have a meeting with you to discuss how we can do that. Now, what I would say to you is prepare for that meeting, because you know they'll say, okay, tell me now, okay? You don't want to do that. You want a proper meeting to discuss it. And then come up with 3 things where you think you could make changes. No more than 3 initially, because you'll confuse them and you'll confuse you. And then if you do those 3 things absolutely immaculately, they will trust you to do other things after that. So maybe it's that you think you would like to take over doing email. Maybe it's that you think you should have an internal assistant network, and especially at this time, it's proving to you how you should all have more communication. Maybe it's that you would like to do briefing documents or look at the history of clients before they get on the phone to them, or whatever it is, choose 3, do them immaculately, and then they'll give you more responsibility after that. Here's the thing, look. Outside of your comfort zone is very definitely where the magic happens. If you're in your comfort zone right now, you're not in the right place. And I'm going to leave you with my very favorite quote in the world that says that 20 years from now, you're going to be far more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the things that you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade wind in your sails, explore, dream, and discover. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy. Wow, that just flew by. I literally can't believe how quickly that went. You can, I don't know if you fancy stopping to share your screen now. We can then...
Absolutely.
That's all right. And then, so, hello, there we are. Right, good. Okay, so we had lots of questions fly in through that. We're now going to go through all the sort of preloaded, well, as many of the preloaded questions as we possibly can. Lucy, you're getting so many nice thank yous. I think that was absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
So many good tips there on the advice and the mindset. One thing that really springs to mind that I think before anyone leaves, I think the most useful thing they can take away from this conversation is just around how to educate, how you know, there was a lot of messages there around saying, you know, they won't let me do it. I keep asking, they won't let me do it. Just can you reiterate the approach, a really good way of making the approach to your bosses if they're not utilising you properly, and making sure and showing them why they need to?
I think it's really important that it's not about you when you approach them. It's about them, and it's about the business. Because if you make it about you, with the best will in the world, they don't care. Okay, however much they like you. So that woman who did the webinar for us this afternoon on how best to step up during this crisis reminded me that my role is to make you the very best that you can be. And I have some ideas around that. I want to fix a meeting with you to sit down and talk about it. Now, this is the thing. So many of you are saying to me at the moment, I really don't know what to do. They're not giving me anything. Stop waiting. Don't wait for permission. You know what you should be doing. You know where you can add value. Go. Be proactive. Call them directly after this call and say to them, I want to fix that meeting with you. And then go with a list of things, you know. Have we thought through all these processes, all these systems? These are the things that I can see that we're going to need to put in place. Would you like me to do research into what some other companies are doing? You know, just think about all the different things that you really could do. What are things you've wanted to do forever and you thought, oh, I wish they would let me do that. Now is the time, because they are absolutely under the cosh. They are weighed down with the amount of work that they've got to do, and anything you can take away from them is going to be really valued. I'm speaking as one who knows.
And I think the business speak is a really good approach. It's thinking about presenting a case, it's influence, it's sales. You've got to be strategic. You can't, like you say, not making it about you is super important. Go, you know, think about the time saving things that Lucy said, the cost per hour. You know, if you remembering that you're employed by a business, it's just so important, because that speaks to most execs, right? That's what they understand is like the bottom line and time.
Yes, and Heather Baker, who's another amazing trainer, always says you work for your business with your manager.
Yeah, partnerships, good partnerships. Well, we've broken down all the questions that we had in advance into sort of some categories. We've got sort of job-related ones, communication themes, progression, the future, and flexi working. Before we go straight into those, we just want to quickly run a poll number 2, and that will come up shortly. Just to off the back of Lucy's presentation, we just want to make sure that you're going to take away some of these things and implement them. So we want you to commit to one. So yeah, Ben, if you wouldn't mind sharing it. So which aspect of the new normal resonates most with you, and is something that you're sort of going to commit to doing going forward? So we've got not being afraid to get things wrong, getting over feeling stupid. We couldn't put them all on there, but we put some. Getting over feeling stupid, being hungry to understand more, really understanding the strategy, and giving repetitive jobs to someone less experienced. So, just quickly to see which one of these resonated the most with you. And there's no right answer. They were all brilliant. I love the new normal slide. It was I think it was my favorite slide in the presentation. So I think that's probably enough time, but just good to see which ones resonated. Being hungry. Yes!
Fantastic. Good, my work is done.
Yeah, that's literally my most favourite one as well. I'm so excited. Right, let's just mic drop. Let's go. No, I'm kidding. So we've got lots of good questions here. So let's have a look. So you've talked about AI. So let's go on the job-related one. You talked about AI. My view is that AI is a tool, but just reiterate, how can we keep our jobs in the face of AI?
I think AI is, just look at Alexa as an example, okay? So I saw Diana Brandl's amazing presentation quite recently on Alexa and the way that it's able to be utilized in an office. And did you know it has 55,000 business applications already? In some companies in Germany which she has seen, they will walk into a meeting room and they'll say, Alexa, prepare the meeting room for the meeting, and the blind will come down and the lights will go up, and or they'll say, please reorder the paper for the photocopier, or they'll say, book me a taxi, or they'll say, remind me I need to do this. They have them in every room. That isn't going to take your job. However, if you are doing the same thing twice in exactly the same way, it can be automated, and eventually it will be. I've seen companies all over the world right now who are setting up areas of the business when they're restructuring for junior assistants to do that task-based stuff. And the reason for that is because at some point they're going to turn that over to the machines. So if you want to get ahead, you've got to be proving your return on investment right now and showing them that you are capable of getting your head around that non-task-based stuff. So go and have a look at how you feel you can add to the bottom line. Where can you step up to free up their time? Because for every hour you free them up, that's an hour times their salary that you're giving back to the business. That's the way you need to be thinking.
Love that. During my career as a PA, EA, the majority of my time was working one-to-one with my exec and really getting to know the business and my exec so that I could make a valuable contribution. Listen to Lucy talk about the assistant, and it seems to be on a one-to-one basis. However, I'm finding the majority of jobs out there are more team assistants, even though the title is PA, EA. What are you looking, and you are looking after the executive plus their teams. What is Lucy's view on this, and what advice do you have?
Oh, yes. Okay. So you are absolutely correct. And in fact, it's now only 1 in 5 that is working with one executive. And the average number of executives you're working with are 4. So there are a couple of things around that. Firstly, I would say the time boxing thing that I talked to you about before, which Matt and I do, is so useful in that situation, because then if you share that with all your executives, they're able to see what you're doing and they're able to see where to slot in. And if you have one of those executives that is doing their, well, I'm more important than the rest bit, then it's a bit like divorcing parents. You get them to go into a room together and discuss what the priorities are. That isn't your job to decide the priorities, it's theirs. So that's that bit. I think visually showing all that is excellent. The other thing I would say to you is go away and look at Insights or one of those similar models, and look at what the personalities of your executives might be, because some will need hand-holding more than others dependent on what their personality is. If you don't know about that stuff, then please, again, email me. I can send you a link so you can have a look. But basically, it's a bit like the bell bin stuff I was talking about right at the beginning. Some of your executives will be, click, the task be done. I only need a couple of bullet points a week. Tell me exactly what it is you've been doing. You'll get another executive that will want everything in minute detail. And so often you say to me, they're a micromanager, they're driving me mad. No, they're not. They're just the blue personality, and they can't handle it without the detail. And I talk a lot more about that in my training.
If they're micromanagers, sometimes it's just they need to just know what you're doing, and as soon as you sort of show to them, look, don't worry, I'm getting it done.
Yes.
It. They'll start backing off. You'll notice I used to be one, so you will. I 100% know that can work. Okay, another question around the job-related ones is how can I keep adding value and progress my career when my manager has been in their role for a long time?
Oh, okay. That's hard, but I think sometimes they don't realize what you could do for them, and they're really set in their ways. So I would go and do that conversation along the lines of the what I talked to you about for email, and basically look at how much time you can save them if they hand it over. You know what? You're not a tree. If you are really unhappy and it isn't working for you and it's never going to work for you, then maybe there's something better out there for you. But really what we want you to be doing is to have those conversations, because sometimes even the most set in their ways executives suddenly have a moment of absolute clarity. And I've had people who come to my training where we've talked it through, they've gone away and had those discussions with people they've worked for 20 years, and everything's changed on a sixpence because their executive suddenly goes, oh my gosh, that's what you're meant to be doing for me. Yes, let's get on with it.
And I think it's similar as well if you're being blocked by other areas. So there's another question around HR not letting me, and my exec isn't even jumping on my one-to-one with me. So it's making me feel invaluable and useless. So I'm sort of feeling like I don't know what else to try. I
think it's around the language you're telling yourself. And there is I think we train people how to treat us, first of all. I think that letting you is a very old-fashioned view of the assistant. I can't think of anybody else in the business saying, well, they wouldn't let me. Yeah. Really. It isn't a subservient role, or it shouldn't be anymore. It might be about servant leadership, but that's something utterly different. So I would be telling them the way that you're going to do it, not in an aggressive way, but grabbing hold of it and saying, I am going to do this and this. And then your other point, the one-to-ones. Now, this is interesting. I did a meeting in New York last year, which was for a secret society of really top executives and their assistants. And I had a panel of CEOs, and I asked the community what they wanted me to ask them. And so many of you came back and said, I can't get a one-to-one with my executive. And I said to the panel, this was my top question, what would you answer? And they blinked at me. And they said, but don't they operate the calendar? And then I thought about it, and I knew exactly what they meant. Matt puts himself on my calendar every morning. I don't ever sit there and think, why is Matt here? If I'm in my office, people come in, we talk, they go. People come in, we talk, they go. It isn't something that I do. He has my calendar. He has my calendar totally. I never book anything into my calendar. Therefore, if he appears, I don't think, what's Matt doing here? Why do I need to see him? Let yourself go. Put yourself on the calendar. They won't think, why are you doing that? They'll be pleased to see you.
I think that's really good advice. If you keep sending an email and the request is being ignored, or WhatsApp, just keep putting yourself in the calendar on repeat and send the Zoom link and just keep bombarding them until they answer.
Can I give one more tip for calendar, by the way? Because again, it's another one where they say, I don't want you managing my calendar, I can manage my calendar.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions around that.
Yeah, Matt and I heard at a training course by a lady called Laura Belgrado, the most amazing technique. And having heard it, it has made so much sense, and it saved up so much of my time. Because you're doing those conversations the whole time where you're talking to people and going, well, maybe we could do it then, and maybe we could do it then, and maybe we could look at that, and maybe talk to Matthew, and then we can. Total nonsense. These days, somebody writes to me, and I go, hi, lovely to hear from you. Yes, I'd love to have a meeting with you, or I'd love to do your event, whatever, but you're going to have to talk to Matt because he'll kill me if I start playing with my calendar. And then it goes to Matthew. Now, somewhere on that email, underneath the signature, where nobody's going to look, I put a number between 1 and 5. And he knows that if it's a 1, I want to call with that person today. And if it's a 5, it will be a cold day in hell before you get a meeting with me. So he will go back and be very lovely, but he'll say, I'm terribly sorry. She's so busy at the moment. She's traveling a lot. She just doesn't have time to talk right now. But I'll block you in for a meeting in 3 months' time. So what it means is it stops us doing all that nonsense backwards and forwards, because he knows exactly how important it is in a heartbeat, and I don't have to get away from my brand and be nasty to anybody. It just all goes straight to him, and it saves me so much time, I can't tell you.
Lucy, you know when I email you, I'm going to be looking at your signature now. I better be a 1.
Sure, always, always.
That's a good idea, because no one's going to look in there. You hope not,
No.
right now, but... okay, other questions around progression and, a really good one I liked around communication that I thought we could ask. So either in taking on a new role or right now, what 3 questions should I ask my new exec, or if I'm, around that?
Oh, wow. I have a huge list of those, which I'm really happy to share with you, Sivan, so that you can share them with the audience. But to me, I think what are your goals and objectives for this year? I think that's got to be number 1. And alongside that, what does success look like this year? Because the 2 things could be totally different to them. The business might be setting them something, but for them personally, what success looks like is something totally different. I would be asking about what your previous executive assistant did that you absolutely loved, or what did your previous executive assistant do that you weren't so keen on? Who should I be putting straight through? Who would I absolutely not be putting straight through? Oh goodness, just so many different
I like the
things.
one about the pet hates, and also the successes and the goals. They're really good questions to ask. And actually, also, have you had an executive assistant before? Because
yes.
They have. They might not have had one. So actually, if they haven't, then
hallelujah! I'm going to train you how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, you should come into your own. Okay, other questions on progression and the future, because I think that's quite a big one right now. So how can assistants become management? I think we have covered that quite a lot, but is there anything else you wanted to add on that, Lucy?
I think by behaving like it. I think, we talked about Anne, and we talked about her getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and taking herself up into a management position. But I think, if, in all seriousness, joking apart, if you want to be treated like management, behave like it. Look at the way that other management are behaving. Look at how they're grabbing projects and they're not waiting to be asked. And they're coming up with ideas, and they're not afraid to have their seat at the table. And here's the thing, we keep talking about the fact that as assistants, we want our seat at the table. No, we don't just want our seat at the table. We want to be part of the conversation, and not just at the table to take minutes. And I think that is about training people how to treat you. And once they realize you're not talking nonsense and that you have a contribution to make, everything changes.
How do you recommend, if let's say you are invited to be on a meeting? So we set some people the challenge 30 days ago. Hopefully some of you have taken us up on that challenge. Actually, I'd be really interested to see if any of you did, for those that are still here. Did you get in to sit in on one meeting in 30 days? But if you did, and you've now had your chance to sit in on a couple of meetings, and originally just to take minutes, how do you, I would have no problem with it, I sort of interrupt like crazy, but if you're someone who is probably a bit more polite, how do you interrupt if you've got a good point, or how do you make sure that you say something relevant at a meeting?
I think it's interesting having this medium now for meetings, because whereas we used to be in the office and there would be some overbearing person who swaned around the office who had their seat at the head of the table, putting us into Zoom meetings or Microsoft Teams meetings puts us all on an even playing field, and nobody's got that kind of physical superiority. And if we go back to what I was saying about communication being 55% body language, it actually makes it far easier to say, I've got an idea around that. I read something around that. The more you can teach yourself, the more you can learn. And especially if you're reading about the business and learning about your business, you will have things where you'll think, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Or I've got a question about that. If you aren't doing meetings at the moment with your executive where you're sitting and you're listening in, here is a really good time to do it, because to suggest you are doing so many meetings at the moment, how would it be if I participated in some of those where you would like me to be your stunt double and your eyes and ears, so that I am taking notes so that you don't have to remember everything that's going on, so that afterwards I'm able to say, here are the things that other people promised to do and in what time frames, or here are some of the ideas that people had, because they won't remember when they come out the other end. Just offer yourself as somebody who can sit and, not take minutes, but actually act as a reminder. Richard Branson says that Helen Clark, who is his assistant, is his memory. And I think that's a really great way to think about yourself as an assistant.
And not just writing them, but actually actioning them. Honestly, Lucy, I know, after a meeting, the amount of things you have to do, and you sit there thinking, oh God, I've got to do so many of these. I don't want to do any of these. I want some help doing them. And if you'd have been on there, you could have just been like, don't worry, I'm on it, dealing with it.
Yes. And one of the things actually that Anne said when I was talking about being chief of staff that I really loved was the fact that she sat in meetings and she would not only go, I've got that, I'm on that, but she was also saying, don't worry about people delivering that part of the project on time, I'm on it, and I'll be chasing them to make sure that by the time we get to that deadline, it's done. Just think as an executive, how amazing that would be. I've got somebody here saying interrupting is really hard. I don't think most people in senior management find interrupting hard, quite the reverse. And, it is getting out of your own mind, I think, and getting them used to you talking. It's not talking, it's interrupting. You've got an idea, it's not interrupting, it's talking. You have an idea, you have a suggestion. Your suggestion is every bit as valid as everybody else's, and you're part of the team. And actually, if we go back to what I was saying about Belbin and you being the person doing processes and procedures, maybe start by talking about that and saying, somebody suggests something is done, and you saying, you know what, I've got a really good idea as to how we can put the process together for that. I'm going to take that away and work on it. Even starting off by saying things like that, just get people used to hearing you coming up with ideas and suggestions.
Yeah, and talking about yourself, we did that at Job Search, we did our team roles, and it was just so invaluable in understanding each other as a team. And I think that's also a really good thing to be doing, especially if you look after a team of execs, is doing the team roles and therefore showing them that you are the other side of their coin, if just in case they didn't know it before. Lucy, off topic, but I'm a avid reader myself. What are your 3 favourite books that you recommend reading?
From a business point of view, or from a personal point of view, or?
Business, I would say. That's probably more relevant.
Oh gosh, well, so much of my stuff is around publishing, and obviously I read all the books that are recommended to me on the EA role. I
really think I'm a massive fan of Matthew Syed. I talk about him a lot, and he's written a book called Rebel Ideas, which is all around cognitive diversity. And if you are sort of struggling to demonstrate your value, or if you're in a position where you can't get your executive to see the value of diversity, and by I don't mean diversity just in gender, I'm talking about cognitive diversity, which is your skill set, what you offer to the table, if you like, and what you bring to the team. I think if you can read that, you'll then be able to communicate even better why the fact that you have a different way of looking at things and the fact that you approach things differently is absolutely critical right now, because you don't know what you don't know, and that includes your execs. So I think if you can show them the value of that, so understanding that, I think is really great.
Yeah, and I read a lot of biographies. Because I find them really inspiring, looking at what people do. I loved Lean In and I loved Option B by Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, because A, she's a woman in a man's world, really, but B, the way that she thinks about things in terms of, you shouldn't be trying to be like a man. And for those of us that are baby boomers, you spent so much of your career trying to keep up with the men rather than being a woman in your own right and actually enjoying that as part of your career. I thought that was really an interesting book. I've really enjoyed the book recently on Story Brand, which is all about marketing, but it is very much about how you use telling stories to get your point across. And that most really amazing films and most amazing marketing takes on a format that is very much like one of those action hero movies. So you have a hero, you have someone who comes along to help them, they make it through, and amazing things happen. And that was it was a really great book. That's a recent one I've read. But,
another one that I really recommend is The Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. So I think we talk about mindset and we talk about finding your voice, and there was I had a couple of questions on here around, it's the story we tell ourselves. It's how we think of ourselves. I think you know, she's really great at showing you that anything is possible, and that the restrictions we've placed on ourselves are just in our head. And actually, you know, if you want to break those barriers down, then read that book. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Good if you've got a parent too, because it's really relatable for children. I'm just conscious that it's 3:10. I don't know how that's happened. And I know some of you are going to have to get going. For those who sort of want to stick around, I don't know, Lucy, I don't know what your schedule's like, but
I'm happy to do another 10 minutes if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Just if some of you do want to go, and obviously if you want to stay, that's fine. But I think just so you know, we've got next week, Lucy, you know her. We've got on the 3rd of June, not next week. We're now doing them every 2 weeks. On the 3rd of June, we've got Vicky coming back.
Vicky's amazing. If you haven't ever seen Vicky before, go book for Vicky. She's amazing.
She's she did one for us actually 4 weeks. I've got no idea. Oh, well, like maybe it's number 4. It was number 4, so this is number 7. So she's coming back to do all about graphics. So all the tips that a non-graphic designer needs to know when working with images. So you know, photos, screenshots, smart art. I think we're going to share the Eventbrite on here. If you follow us on Eventbrite, you can find it already, and we'll be sharing all the details over the next few days, and that's going to be on the 3rd of June, but do grab a spot because they are really, really popular.
She trained Bill Gates' team how to use Microsoft. I mean, she trained at Buckingham Palace as well. She's a stand-up comedian, so she's funny. I don't know quite how you make Excel funny, but she manages it.
She really does. She really, really does. And actually, for those, again, just remember Lucy is running Exec Live. It's next month, right? On
June the 19th and 20th. So we'll put the link out for that tomorrow with the discount code in case anybody wants it.
Yeah, amazing. So for as anyone who's been at Jossie Talks, you get a discount code. And obviously if you remember our competition, if you tag us on social media, and you get the code, and also we'll pick one lucky person to get a complimentary ticket. So for all of you that are left and still here, let's ask some more questions, answer some more questions, Lucy, for a couple more minutes, and then I'll let you head off to the day. So there's a question around flexi working. So our firm has now switched to working remotely since the pandemic crisis started. Due to the uncertainty of this crisis, what is the thought of global firms allowing employees to work permanently remotely in future environments for EAs versus in the office? What are you hearing on that, Lucy?
I think it depends on the company, and it depends on which country, and it depends on the culture, and it depends on your executive to a certain extent, you know. And I'm absolutely not going to get political on it, but I'm just hearing almost a split down the middle. And there are some assistants who are really looking forward to getting back to work and are saying, I hate working from home with a passion. And to you, I would say, this isn't working from home. This is working from home in a pandemic. And that is a wholly different situation to normal working from home. I've worked from home for 9 years, and this is a lot different.
Yeah, it's really different. It's really, really different.
But for those of you that, you know, like working from home, I would have that conversation, because forever they've been saying, for business reasons, you can't work from home and support your executive. And now they're saying, for business reasons, you have to work from home and support your executive. So it's just taken the entire argument out the window. I would just have the conversation, and I think so much coming out of this pandemic and going back to work is going to be about open communication and being willing to have the conversations on whatever it is that you want to. I've had a couple of these webinars where we've had people saying, oh, my boss is saying this, but I think he's saying this, and I don't know what he means by that. And I'm saying, well, ask. That's the only way you're going to know. You know, you've got to do that talking piece.
I mean, my view is obviously, we recruit specifically for the financial services sector. So alternative investment, as you guys, a lot of you know, who have been with us and the reason you're on this journey. And I think historically, it's not really been something that they offer. But I certainly think they're opening their minds. And I think, you know, we ran a lunch and learn last week, and 25% said they were reviewing their policy. So I think they're moving in the right direction. I think ultimately, it's down to you guys to have proven sort of how effective you can be, really. And I think as long as you continue to do that, you know, the barriers will change. But quite rightly, Lucy, lots of people just want to get back into the office. You know, they're really missing being part of that social buzz and that community, which is so important for EAs.
But I think it's also worth pointing out, you know, Matt and I have worked together now for 8 years, always remotely, and it's never a problem. And actually, even if he was in my office, that would be ridiculous, because I'm away so much, and many of your executives are. They're hardly ever in the office. So what are they talking about when they're saying we want the security of you being in the office? Not with technology these days, it's not necessary.
No,
really not necessary.
And I think there's other questions around, you know, what do you think are the main differences that you see between being a VA, if you like, as they are now, to an EA when you're in the office?
Okay, so the main difference is that if you're a VA, you're self-employed. I mean, I have to say that PwC in the UK now are employing a team of VAs as opposed to EAs to work from home, but they are fully paid, fully employed. They just work from home and come into the office occasionally. That to me isn't a VA. Although obviously the terminology is getting muddled.
Yeah.
A VA to me is somebody that runs their own business, that works from home and finds their own clients and probably works for 2 or 3 different clients and specializes in an area. And the skill sets that you need are far more as a business owner as opposed to your EA skill sets or alongside your EA skill sets.
And I think tech skills are really, really important. And as you say, sort of having, I mean, we recruit VAs here, and I think they sort of has a niche, has an area that they're really good at, whether it's marketing, social media, branding, you know, tech, Microsoft Office, website maintenance, invoicing.
Or a sector. So they might say, I'm a VA that looks after speakers, or I'm a VA that looks after consultants, or I'm a VA that looks after engineers, or whatever it happens to be. But they tend to really get to know their market and then be specialists in that area and get paid by the hour for doing stuff.
I'm just trying to think if there's any other of the questions that have come through in advance. And I'm just going to have a quick look at the, Lucy, do you want to just take a quick look at the Q&A panel as well?
Yes.
There's a question here, sort of any advice for a PA to EA to CEO, so an assistant PA, where there is exposure to both the EA and CEO simultaneously. The triangle dimension can make things more complex, and there is a concern of stepping on toes. Any advice?
So an EA and a CEO and a C.
So I think it's an assistant PA. So you've got the EA to the CEO, and then you've got the third here who sort of supports the 2 of them, I think.
Again, it's communication, and it's working out exactly who is doing what. It's interesting. I just did a presentation in the States, which was on the difference between the EA, the chief of staff, and the CEO, and how that triumvirate works together. And I think, as is so often the case with assistants, it is a misunderstanding about what each of the roles is meant to be doing, so that everybody feels they're treading on each other's toes. And to me, in that situation, you've got the CEO who's outward facing and is going and seeing clients and coming up with new ideas and so on. You've got the chief of staff who is not an EA. What they're doing is they are very much the stunt double. They are coaching the CEO on the things that they ought to be looking at and doing research into what the CEO did last year and what worked best for them. They're looking at the business very much from a top-down point of view and how things all get put together.
Very focused.
Yeah, whereas the EA is managing the CEO on a day-to-day basis, very much in the way that we've been talking about. But so many companies don't know what to do with their assistants, their EAs, because they don't have any career progression. So they just give them the title of the chief of staff, keep them happy, and then everybody gets really confused because nobody's quite sure who's meant to be doing what. And it sounds like this is a similar situation. Work out what the assistant EA is meant to be doing, work out what the EA is meant to be doing, and work out how both of those feed into the CEO.
Okay, so last question of the day. How do you get the executive you're working for to appreciate the value that a mature career EA can bring to the company that have hired him or her?
Yes. Are we talking here about ageism, or are we just...
It doesn't say, but I think it's just perhaps, I get the sense from the question that potentially their value and experience isn't properly being utilised by the sounds of it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very much the same as all those conversations. You know, I would sit down and say, I have some ideas around how I can support you to be the best you can possibly be. I have worked for, you know, here are some of the things that I have done for executives in the past. Here is what that contributes in terms of giving them back their time. Here is what that contributes in terms of the bottom line. I quite often say I want to write a book saying, here is how to speak business.
I love that.
You know, because I think so many of us really understand what we're doing, but putting it in business terms so that they sit up and go, blimey, is me doing my own email really costing the business 100,000 a year? That's where they sit up and they work, you know.
Good. Well, thank you, Lucy. So thanks, everybody. We will share the recording, the key takeaways. We will share all the links to Lucy's enormous library of amazingness. And we will share Lucy's contact details, my contact details. We're both very happy to be contacted. We're on LinkedIn. Contact us anytime. Remember, if you take part in the competition, you'll get the discount code for Exec Live, get 10% off, and we'll pick a lucky winner who gets a complimentary ticket from us. And I think that's everything I've got to say. Lucy?
Thank you all so much. It's just been really, really wonderful to be in contact with you. If you want to contact me, then obviously when the presentation comes through, my contact details are on there. But also we have the most amazing Facebook group with over 8,000 people on it now who are all sharing information and whatever. So we've even got a PA choir on there. So come and join. We'd love to see you. And thank you all very much for giving up time this afternoon to spend time with us.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to taking off my cardigan. I'm absolutely boiling.
I'm boiling too.
Good. Well, enjoy your Wednesdays, and we will see you all hopefully on the third with Vicky to learn how to do images. And hopefully some of you will be joining Lucy at Exec Live. Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.